My name is Andrew Cooley, and a lot of you would know me as a property auctioneer, and we do thousands of auctions right across Sydney. But today, we're actually launching a brand new podcast series where we step out of real estate, and I'm going to interview a number of key people who are at the absolute top of their game. And that's what brings us here today to Surrey Hills. We're about to meet a tattoo artist who is nationally and internationally known as one of the best artists right across the world, Forlife. And as you'll see in a couple of moments' time, we're about to enter Authentic Ink Studio, again, based here in Surrey Hills. Now, it's very unassuming, and for those who don't know much about tattoos, you may not even realize that it's actually here. So follow me, and we're going to meet our first guest speaker, Forlife.
Andrew, how are you, man?
Good, mate. How are you?
Awesome, bro.
Thanks for having me.
My pleasure.
Thank you. So, whenever we talk to people, I think audience always love to know a little bit about the person we're talking about, right? So, let's start from the beginning. Tell me more about you. Who's Ian?
When you say the beginning, do you mean like...
I want you to take me all the way back.
From the very beginning? Okay. I was originally born in Chile, South America, obviously. Immigrated to Canada when I was a young child. Grew up in Ontario mostly, Toronto.
And you were on a farm, weren't you?
Yeah, well, I lived in a place, like my family had a farm that we used to, yeah. London, Ontario is a small town at this time.
Okay.
So, yeah, we were kind of on the outskirts most of the time, and spent a lot of time going out to farms and that kind of stuff. And yeah, it was the 70s, right? So it was a very, very different time. Yeah, then I moved to the big city of Toronto, where I spent my formative teenage years, and then got into tattooing there.
And so, I mean, I can imagine becoming a tattoo artist. It's not something that just happens overnight, right? Have you always had an interest in art?
Yeah, well, I've always been interested in art. I've been drawing since I was a child, and my family sort of pushed me into that direction. Before I was a tattooer, I was definitely, working in artistic ways. Worked in a little bit of film, doing a little bit of set design, a little bit of art direction.
Yeah.
Designed a bar.
You designed a bar?
Yeah, an interior design of a bar, and I did the interior of a restaurant as well.
Really?
Yeah.
How old were you when you were doing that?
Yeah, I don't know, 23, 24. So,
wow. Okay.
Yeah. And then that was all just very stressful. And a lot of my friends were already tattooing, and I was obviously interested in tattoos, being a young punk rocker rebel. And so...
Were you in like the black jacket,
yeah,
the red shirt,
full on,
the full...
Yeah.
You were proper punk.
Yeah, well, alternative.
Did you have the mohawk,
we say alternative. Actually, I had many different hairstyles. So, yeah. So I just naturally migrated into tattooing.
And so you always enjoyed drawing, painting,
all
that sort of stuff?
Yeah. I mean, when tattooing at that time was a very different space.
Yeah.
There was no real tattoo studio. Like, there was probably Toronto had, I think, about 4 tattoo studios.
Across the whole...
Yeah, it was a different... I mean, you got to remember, there was no internet, there was no TV shows.
Yeah.
There was only when I started tattooing, there was probably... They just came out with something called International Tattoo.
Wow.
Which was the first tattoo magazine solely based on tattoos.
So
before that was all just biker. So you get like Outlaw Biker magazine, and there'd be some tattoos in the back, after you see the hairy breasts and stuff.
So if you were wanting to get a tattoo back then, you couldn't jump on the internet, you couldn't get on Instagram, you'd have to buy a magazine or something?
You literally had to have the courage to walk into a shop. So it just brought a different kind of clientele. People really wanted it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of scary walking into an old school tattoo shop.
Yeah.
Bikers and scary looking alternative people there. And, you'd have a shop that was just covered in flash, all the different sort of, black tribal designs and Tasmanian devils and, all that kind of stuff. So, I mean, obviously with the authentic, Grim Reapers and wizards and crystal balls
skulls
and castles
and all that
skulls,
sort of stuff.
all that, everything that you imagine you know, an old school tattoo studio would have. It
Yeah.
definitely was that. So, you know, people that at that time that wanted tattoos really wanted
They
them.
really wanted it.
Yeah.
And I can imagine, you know, like it's a huge transition, right? Like going from drawing on paper with pencil and being able to rub it out to then actually doing your first tattoo
Yeah.
on someone. I can imagine that would be massively nerve-wracking.
Yeah.
Do you remember the very first time you did a tattoo on someone?
Yeah, of course, because I did it on myself, obviously. Traditionally,
You tattooed yourself?
yeah, traditionally at that time, you do like a formal apprenticeship at a tattoo shop because again, I mean, there's no information. I mean, there's no internet,
Yeah.
nothing. And I mean, there's only a handful of tattoo studios, so you have to sort of beg, borrow, and plead your way into a tattoo shop. So yeah, traditionally your first tattoo would be on yourself, on your ankle, you know.
And that's what you did?
Yeah, we all did it. Yeah, and it's an abysmal mess, and you know.
So you're sitting there, kind of like we are now,
Yeah.
ankle,
Mm-hmm.
and you've got zzz
yeah,
on
just
yourself.
Like that. Yeah.
So you're dealing with, A, the pain.
Yeah, actually, you don't really feel it because you're so hyper focused on balancing. Because back then we were using these coil machines, which are kind of heavy,
Okay.
and the tubes were really thin, so your hands are cramping, and you're trying to balance this thing in your hand, and you're trying this needle shooting out. So you're more focused on that and not, you know, carving up your leg into like hamburger than the actual.
So were you
pain.
happy with the end design?
Well, not particularly. I mean, it's your first tattoo. You're not getting a lot of guidance on that one.
Yeah.
You know, they just kind of allow you to make mistakes so that you learn to correct them.
Yeah,
you know?
because I can imagine as well, like, you know, being a tattoo artist, the fear of making a mistake on someone's body would be monstrous.
That's the one,
right?
yeah.
Because, I mean, one of your social names is Tattoos for Life, right? So that it's genuinely for life.
For life, yeah.
So if you make a mistake, then that person has to deal with that for their life.
Correct.
So your ankle, is that, do you show it often? Or?
No, I mean, well, when I wear shorts, obviously, but yeah, I mean, we do have laser technology now. But,
Yeah.
I mean, you don't want to get rid of those memories.
No,
right?
of course. So the game of tattooing, I guess, essentially really has evolved a lot, right?
Massive.
Over time.
Massive.
When you think about, like you said, there was only a handful of studios. Very different vibe to going into a tattoo studio now. For a lot of our listeners, Ian, you know, exercise, healthy eating, motivation, all that sort of stuff really comes into play. And one of the main reasons why I wanted to introduce you to a lot of the people who will be watching this podcast is you are at the absolute top of your game. You know, you look at the tattoo artists both nationally and internationally, and anyone you talk to, Ian always comes up. So we'll come back to that. I want to focus a little bit more on, you know, your exercise, your diet, your headspace. You and I have spent a lot of time in a chair just over there, where most of the time I'm doing that and trying to focus on what we're talking about. But one of the things that I really noted with you is you're really strict on your disciplines, on your non-negotiables. Yeah, and you're quite a fit-looking dude as well. Tell me a bit about your training. What sort of training do you do?
Yeah. Well, the tattoo artist's life is very sedimentary. And because of the strange hours that we end up working, food tends to be a problem.
Yep.
So you find a lot of people are just eating, you know, garbage stuff out of a 7-Eleven or, you know, the hamburger place around the corner. So it's really tricky. I learned this at an early stage of tattooing that in order to stay healthy, you know, you actually had to be disciplined to do so, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, waking up first thing in the morning, 5 a.m., 6 a.m., going for runs. I started with running. I had a large running addiction. So I was running like
marathons?
Well, I did a little bit of that, but I'd run about 13 kilometers a day.
Wow.
At very high speed every single day without a doubt. So I'd go out, drink, party all night, wake up, get on the run, you know.
So you'd still be able to go out, have a good time, and still get up and go for the run the
you
next
just
day?
eat the pain, you know.
And that was a non-negotiable for you?
Yeah. And that evolved into CrossFit. Like the shop I had was in Spain, was next to an American military base,
Yep.
big Navy base in Rota. And at that time, there was a lot of Navy SEALs there and stuff. And I had friends that sort of introduced me to CrossFit when it was just a website. I mean,
Okay.
I hate to say that. This is such a dirty word. We'll say functional training, right? Yeah, so I got into functional training way back about 23 years ago, something like
Wow.
that.
Okay. So before it
22
became
years
a
ago.
real big
Yeah,
thing
it was just a
like it is
website. It
now.
was just a website with a bunch of, military dudes and
Yeah.
Olympic lifters talking stuff,
Okay.
So yeah, that it really translated for me because I was constantly traveling, and it's so difficult to, get access to gyms in different
Yeah.
countries. So if I'm,
Yeah.
say I'm working in Switzerland, and then next week I'll be in Germany, and then the week after that I'll be in France. I mean, there's no gyms, right? So, I mean, I can't have a gym membership that transcends to these.
Yeah.
And
All
who
these
knows,
different-
who knows, in the shops that I'm working at,
Yeah.
it's complicated. So I found that I was able to work out on the street, sort of, find a school,
And do what?
playground. Well, you can do push-ups and pull-ups, and,
Okay.
you can do box jumps and burpees and sprints.
Yep.
There's a lot you can do,
I'm going to pretend to know what all that
What
means.
I'm talking about, yeah.
That sounds good because I'm more the gym generation, right? Where you
Yeah.
join a gym and you get what's called almost like a passport.
Mm.
So I'm a member of Fitness First.
Right.
So I
Yeah,
could go
you can
to any
Fitness
city
First,
and
yeah.
go to any Fitness
Yeah.
First.
Well, there's not a lot of Fitness First in Europe. So
but
I'm being
you were
European-based.
you were playgrounds and
Yeah.
push-ups and
Yeah.
pull-ups and
bit more
burpees
military
that sort of stuff.
framework.
And that now has continued for you to evolve.
Yeah,
You're
of
still
course.
doing that sort of training now, and
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Daily,
you- and
when
you're-
I'm not injured.
yeah. Now, something we've spoken a lot about before is your diet,
Mm.
and I find this really fascinating
Mm.
because I'm a big lover of carbs.
Mm.
Love bread. I love rice.
We all love bread.
We all love that. Pasta,
Mm.
you know,
We all
sensational.
love pasta.
But I remember when we first met, and I said to you, "Tell me a bit about your diet," because I was really interested to learn, about your training and about your exercise and your health and your eating and all that sort of stuff. And I said, "What do you eat?" And you just said one word:
Meat.
meat.
Yeah, pure carnivore.
Okay. What does that involve?
Yeah. Well, I've tried a lot of different diets. I guess it was sort of like an evolution. So, I got into keto when ketogenic diet first started, and I found it really difficult to maintain a ketogenic diet because it was like, to do it properly, you got to be pricking your finger and doing blood tests all the time to make sure
Okay.
that you're in ketosis.
Yep.
And if not, you got to regulate that, because your body's trying to. And then I evolved into sort of carnivore and just started eating meat. So I've been doing that for about 7 years. So just basically meat, raw dairy, raw eggs, all that kind of stuff.
I remember you made a really interesting point one time, and you said to me, a lot of people around 3 p.m. get tired.
Mm.
And I know I do sometimes as well, right?
Mm.
But you were like, you don't ever get that.
Nah, I never get the dip.
You
Well,
never get
'cause-
the dip.
Nah. Nope. Never
And do you
get the
find it
dip.
hard though? Like, is it restricting, to always be trying to eat meat and raw products?
Well,
And
you get used to it, It
Yeah.
actually ends up being a little bit cheaper. I kind of buy everything in bulk,
Yep.
right? So I don't have to go. I get it all delivered to me.
So it's quite easy.
So it's quite simple.
And you
yeah.
smoke your meat too, don't you?
I do. I have a
Something that you and I have
smoke-
debated about.
I smoke.
I'm a
every day.
Weber guy,
I'm a
but you
smoker,
smoke your
yeah.
you smoke your
Because you haven't done it yet. You have to come over.
I'll have to
You
give it a
come
go
over,
sometime.
and I'll give you a beautiful smoked Scotch fillet, and then you tell me,
Okay, all right. I mean, I cook a pretty good eye fillet
oh, you can give
on
it a
the
shot.
Weber, but
It's a different animal.
we'll definitely give it a go.
It's definitely-
The reason why I find this stuff really important is because if you look at high performers, and you're a high performer within your industry, if you look at high performers within the real estate industry, in the law industry, in whatever type of industry, there's always these certain common themes that come about. And one of the common themes I've really become accustomed to with talking to people like yourself is the importance of exercise, the importance of eating really well, and that then gives you a really good headspace. Yeah. And I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I can imagine being a tattoo artist is really quite an intimate job.
It is, yeah.
Yeah. And look, I learned that again with you as well when we've spent hours and hours together.
It's demanding on a lot of levels.
A lot of levels.
I mean, it depends on the level of career that you're interested in, but at the time that the way I developed as a tattoo artist, we draw everything.
Yeah.
So you're constant, it's a career.
It's a career.
You don't
Yeah.
just shut it off when the doors close at the studio and you go home.
Yeah.
You're on.
You're always
24
on.
hours a day. And especially now with social media, it's like I can't look at my phone and not see tattoos.
Yeah.
So you're just always in it, and you're always being inspired, and you're always being creative, and you're constantly drawing, and it's very, very demanding.
Yeah.
And then on the back end of that, you also need to have social skills.
Yes.
So, and you're dealing with so many different personalities and, so many different styles of people, sensitivities. And
Yeah.
then people, when they're around you, they're either anxious, and then when the tattoo's finished, they just want to get away from you because they've been in pain for the last 6 hours. So you have to navigate yourself through those situations, right?
Yeah.
And I find that without having healthy lifestyle, you tend to be less patient.
Yes.
You might be less focused. You might not be attentive
Yeah.
when you should be.
Yeah. And
You know?
if you've had a big night and you come in the next day and you're a bit cloudy, a bit groggy,
Yeah, it never happens.
it just can't happen.
Never happens.
It just can't happen.
Never happens.
So it's a really interesting point to make. So, okay, so we've kind of gathered how you became a tattoo artist. We understand the importance of health and fitness. Talk to me a little bit about, the process of someone who was booking you for a tattoo. I know I've been through that process, and before you said some people just want to get away from you after the tattoo, whereas I've kind of been like more hanging around, and you're like, okay, man, the session's done, it's time to go.
Yeah, well,
I've got someone after you.
Well, you get that as well. I mean, it's a very intimate thing, so you get several different styles of people.
Yeah, but it's interesting what you said about, with social media, right? Because not only are you always looking at tattoo art and things on social media, but I guess as well, clients now have more access to you, right?
Yes.
So you think about before social media, and let's go back to a traditional 9 to 5. Start at 9, finish at 5. And not saying that necessarily was for everyone, but, a client could now contact you at
And they do.
any time.
And
they
do.
could DM you on
And they
Instagram.
do. And sometimes they get very impatient.
I remember over the Christmas holidays, I'd send you a little DM,
Yeah.
and you'd be like, oh, it's cool.
Yep.
We'll get there,
Yep.
So it is, and look, social media, I guess, can be a great thing, and it also can be quite challenging on someone's headspace, right? Because at some point you need to be able to switch off. You need to be able to go, okay, that day's done. Now I need to be able to eat well, train. I know you're a big movie buff. You love watching movies, to be able to sit down and just chill and watch a movie and
Shut off. Yeah.
Shut off. How do you shut off? How do you do it?
Close my eyes, fall asleep. I just stop responding after a certain time in the day.
Yeah.
So I just put the phone down because you gotta make distance.
Yeah.
And I mean, the phone is also, it's addictive anyway, right?
It is.
I'm really not fond of addictions. So whenever I see sort of those addictive patterns developing, I try and
put a stop to it straight away.
Try and put a stop to it.
Yeah.
Identify it. Go, that's not a good thing. And just try and regulate that time. Because, again, as you say, like most people are contacting you through your phone.
Yes.
That tends to be that device. So it's, that's why everything's on silent.
Yes.
That's why I keep everything on silent. And
Which
I'll
is,
answer you when
I'm
I feel
still haven't quite grasped that yet. Because I guess, in my industry, you've always got to be available. You know what I mean? And I'm sure it's similar with a lot of industries. But when a client reaches out to me, I've really got to try and get back to them.
Yeah, of course.
Straight away.
Yeah, it's imperative.
Something I learned before getting my tattoo with you was there are so many different styles of tattoos. Black and grey and colour and Japanese and realism and all that fine line, all this different stuff, right? Tell me about your style and how did you come to evolve to get to what you now really focus on?
Right. So for me, I love tattooing and tattoos. And since I've been doing it for as long as I have, I've been able to see what lasts and what doesn't last and what characteristics are necessary in order to make a tattoo that's going to live on that wear for most of his life, if not his whole life. You
Yeah.
know? So I try and make tattoos in that direction. I also, so mostly Japanese. I mean, I started with traditional Japanese tattooing.
Yep.
It's very challenging at the time. You'd have to go to Japan, buy books, study, do a lot of homework.
You couldn't just get on the internet.
Couldn't just get on the
and
internet.
type in
You had to get on a
Japanese.
plane. And then you had to find some Japanese guy because all the books are written in Japanese and they're in little boxes. You have no idea what you're looking
Wow.
at. It was a real.
So that's dedication.
It was
like,
real.
That's
It was a real
commitment
mission.
to.
Yeah, it is. It's a lot easier now because you get to see it all.
Yeah.
You know, so you can just see what traditional Japanese tattooing is about. But back at that time, you had to figure it out for yourself, so that it takes a lot of time.
Sure.
Through that process, I've learned that the aesthetic of Japanese tattooing is timeless. The saturation is heavy, which means it's going to last in your body for long periods of time.
Yes.
And I just feel that, like with the backgrounds and whatnot, it tends to be really decorative. I think a lot of people miss sort of, you know, they worry about getting something with meaning and they forget that it's an aesthetic thing at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Like, how do you look naked?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, what are you looking at?
Yeah.
Are you like a suitcase with some stickers?
Yep.
Or, you know, do you have a whole other new suit underneath you? And that's what Japanese tattooing is really all about, is building a whole bodysuit. Like
Right.
when you start, like in Japan, traditionally when they start a tattoo, it's a back piece.
It's a back piece.
Yeah.
So normally that's
so
the
they
first.
start on the back and then they work forward.
Right. Okay.
So and it makes sense, especially now. I mean, I realize there's a lot of apprehension when tattooing wasn't as popular, but now tattoos are massive. Nobody cares anymore.
Yes.
If you have a tattoo or you don't have a tattoo, nobody cares.
Yeah.
Right? So I think that it's important that people realize that you're basically creating a whole new shirt or pants or new clothing
New suit.
underneath your daily clothing.
Yeah.
So there'll be two of you dressed and then you naked.
Yes.
And people should be thinking more about that than having meaning, you know?
Yeah.
Than having me. Oh, well, I want this because it's going to have all this meaning. Yeah, but then you kind of have a sticker.
Yeah.
You know?
And, you know, again, mate, interesting you say that because, you know, from a personal experience, remember when we first met.
Yes.
And we spoke about what I was wanting. It was something that was, you know, going to be really meaningful and significant. And obviously I was a complete novice. But what I loved about you, and, you know, which is a whole ethos of this studio that you work in as well, is these tattoos are for life, right? So we were going to do an image that you said, look, man, this will look good for a few years, but in time, it's probably not going to last.
Right.
So why don't we explore some different options? And we actually ended up doing something totally different.
Completely.
Whereas, you know, a lot of tattoo artists might just go, yeah, cool, I can do that for you. No problem. And they'll do it. But you really care about the client.
Yeah.
You know, you want them to have that, almost like that piece of armor, that magical power on them.
Yeah, well, I care about the tattoos.
That is gonna last forever.
I want them to carry that for their life, you know?
Yeah.
Like, for life.
For life, yeah.
That's the point of, you know, it's just the time period that I learned about tattooing, you know? Clients didn't really know. They would come into the shop, they'd be lost.
Yeah.
So it was up to us to guide them.
Yes.
You know? And so I've never really lost that. I mean, you don't tell your mechanic how to fix your car,
Correct.
right? You don't tell your heart surgeon how to, you know, reconnect the arteries to your heart, right? So I think it's important that tattoo artists lead the client into, you know, and the problem that we're living in is obviously Instagram. So now it's a little bit of the opposite, where people are looking at a photo of an image this big, but it's this big and it's glowing, and they don't, you know, and they kind of are leading the artist to say, hey, I just want this, I just want this, I just want this.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, but do you?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
You know, you want that now. But, you know, when you were 19 years old, do you want the same things? You know, you look back at 40 when you were 19, you're going, that's an idiot.
Totally different.
Moron. Like, look at, and you laugh at the hairstyles and you laugh at the photos of the clothes and stuff.
Yep.
So it's that kind of thing where, especially with my time in the industry, that I've seen so many trends come and go.
Yes.
So I try and understand or guide the client to understand that it's important to have something timeless.
Yes. And that essentially is what Japanese tattooing is all about.
Yeah, there's more styles. I mean, there's obviously more black and gray and tribal styles.
Yep.
I mean, we're coming into a really interesting time in tattooing because there's a lot of people that kind of understand that and that are kind of pushing the industry into an interesting direction.
Mm-hmm.
And again, because people are getting more used to getting larger work and planning things out,
Yes.
it's becoming a lot more interesting on that level.
Yeah.
You know, so it's that kind of thing. You know, do you want to have a bunch of photographs on you, or do you want to have,
Larger
you know,
pieces.
beautiful floral patterns and some heavy black? You know,
Yeah.
it's the clothing you're going to wear for the rest of your life. So
Correct.
if you think of it in that way,
Yep.
it's really going to help you make that permanent decision.
Yeah.
Right?
And it again, you know, I remember when I'd say to you, "Hey, what do you think about this?" And you'd be like,
Nah.
"Or what about that color?" Or how about if we do it this way?
Mm.
You know, so again, but you know what? Like like that's one of the benefits of, you know, experience,
Mm.
right? There's in any industry, there's people who have been doing whatever their art form is or their profession is for months, couple of years, decades. Yourself now, 30 odd years,
Yeah, 20, 28, 29.
28, 29, call it
Somewhere
30,
around there.
right?
We'll
You know,
call it 30, sure.
in the industry, right? So
Mm.
the other benefit you have is you've seen your work healed,
That's the one, yeah.
right? So
Over 20 years.
over 20 years. So again, you know, it's not just you saying to someone, I suggest this because it's going to work. You genuinely know because
Yeah.
you've seen your work that you've done
20 years later.
20
yeah.
years ago and it still looks beautiful
Mm.
because you were able to guide the client in
Mm.
getting the right piece. And I think for a lot of people, you know, getting a tattoo might be something a lot of people want to do, but they actually don't know how to do it
Mm.
or what they'd get. And a lot of people have said to me, how did you choose that? How did you come up with something that meant so much? And I was watching a podcast the other day of Kian, who works here as well. And he was saying sometimes it just looks cool. You know, it just looks cool.
That's our rule of thumb. Just get over all the meaning and
Yeah.
just get something that looks cool.
Something
man.
that looks cool, you know?
You know, and make space for the artist to do his job.
Yeah.
Provided it's the correct artist. you know?
Correct. Exactly. So another big element of any person who is successful, and again, coming back to your massive success in the industry, prospecting, you know, trying to win business, trying to maintain business, getting repeat business, referral business. Are there ways in which you could or someone coming into the industry could prospect for clients and try and win business?
Well, yeah, unfortunately, I mean, yeah, so what's happened in my industry is that it's not enough just to be a talented artist. It's not enough to know what you're doing. Now you actually have to take on all this new social media
Yes.
and actually learn how to market yourself on social media. So it's like old dogs having to learn new tricks. You
How you
know?
going with?
Yeah, I think we're
You're
going
doing
pretty
very
good. Man, I've gotten on it quite recently, so I've just
Yeah.
joined TikTok and whatnot. So
Okay, it's really a new world now, isn't it? You know,
yeah,
it's-
you're not. You really need as a tattooer these days to be able to use social media. And
Yeah.
people are a little bit more finicky. There's so many artists out there in the world, and again, this is where it sits. You know, there's so many people that don't really understand or know what they want.
Mhm.
So you gotta, you know, try and identify with them and show them who you are as a person, your mindset,
Yeah.
how you're going to approach your work with them, how you will work with them. And if you're not expressing that out in social media, then I think you'll find yourself a bit lost in
Yeah.
the future.
Because choosing a tattoo before social media, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but
It was word of mouth.
and as well, like I'd come in here, I'd look at all the pictures on the wall,
Yeah.
and would I say that looks really cool?
Yeah.
I'll go with that.
Yeah.
Right. Whereas now,
Yeah. Custom tattooing has really taken over.
Yeah, whereas
well,
now-
because there's so many more images online.
totally right. Whereas now I can get on your Instagram page
Mm.
and go, this guy, he's got the style I want. He's excellent with color.
Mm.
It looks brilliant. That's the guy.
Mm.
You know what I mean? So I can get a real feel for the person before you actually come in and meet you.
Mm.
So if we talk about then, you know, booking you for a tattoo,
Mm.
right? So let's say, for example, someone watching this now, they've been thinking for a long time, I'd love to get a tattoo. How do you actually go about getting Ian?
It's pretty simple, really. Just send me a DM, you know, and
Yep.
I'll guide you through the process, you know. Generally, you can come down to the studio, Authentic Tattoo,
Yep.
Surrey Hills.
But what is the process, right?
The process would be basically we'll sit and have a consultation,
Mhm.
you know. I like to work with my clients visually because a lot of times when people are just sending messages, it's like, oh, I want this on my arm. And I go, yeah, are you 5'8" or are you 5'4"
Yep.
or 7'2"? Like, what arm am I looking at, you know? And then as well as I like to connect with the individuals so I get a vibe and feel for who they are
Mm-hmm.
and make sure that we're doing the right thing for them,
Yes.
you know? And I feel that connection is super important.
Yeah.
It's not, yeah. A lot of people just want to do things online, but I prefer to have people come down and meet me in person.
So I grew up in a family where, tattoos were really taboo. You know what I mean? Like you just wouldn't get a tattoo.
Mm.
So when I first came in here, I was really nervous about actually coming into a tattoo parlor. I didn't know what to expect.
Mm.
But meeting you, you put all my nerves at ease. We did the consultation. We did a complete 360 on what we were going to do based on how it would look in 20, 30, 40 years' time. And then we've spent, like I said, a lot of time together actually doing that. And
We're going to spend a lot more time together.
we've now booked in our other one as well,
Correct.
which is really exciting.
Mm.
So, what's next for Ian?
Hmm.
What's next? You've got the CrossFit style training. You've got brilliant tattoos. You've worked in a lot of countries.
I haven't.
Yeah. So how many countries roughly would you say that you've actually tattooed in?
That's a big number. I don't know. Most of all of Europe, pretty much. South America. Australia, obviously.
Yep.
Yeah, it's
And is the
taken me
plan
around.
to keep traveling?
No, not
keep
so much. I
tattooing
mean,
in
my
different
travel.
areas, or?
I'm getting on in age. You know what I mean? So, I'm here for as long as I can be here. You know, in Australia.
Yep.
I do have a base in Spain.
Okay.
So that'll probably be my retirement as long as everything stays together over in Europe. Things don't get too crazy and my house doesn't disappear.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I guess what's next is in terms of, learning social media, like in terms of, like as you said, like fitness and things like that. You know,
Yep.
learning the new skill of
Yep.
marketing.
And if we look at the studio that you work in here, I know we spoke about this before, but this is from outside. It's very subtle.
It is.
It's very discreet. In fact, you wouldn't even know it was here.
Yeah.
But when you come up, you're opened up into this world of magical art and incredible pieces that are all around the studio.
Right. When my mate built this studio, that was his plan. He was very taken with how tattooing in Japan works. It's all very private. Like there are people just in an apartment building. You go to a random apartment building, you go to a floor and you walk in a door and it's suddenly you're in this magical world of all these tattooers, deshis and stuff. It's really quite interesting.
It's fascinating.
So when my mate opened this studio, that was sort of the idea that it's like if people really want to get the tattoo, they're going to come search for it.
Yes.
If they want to get the quality that they expect, they're going to have to come and search for it.
Yeah.
And that was the idea of the studio.
And what I love about this studio particularly is when you first come in, if you look to your left-hand side, no, your right-hand side, sorry.
Mhm.
Right-hand side.
Yep.
The stairs going upstairs, there are some key words on those stairs. And one of them that really resonated with me was integrity.
Mm.
And what I've loved about my experience with this tattoo parlor is the integrity, the work ethic, the vibe of the tattoo studio, and all the staff are so incredibly friendly and so professional, and you all work so well together and you collaborate with each other. And that must be a great thing, because in this studio, how many artists typically work in here?
It varies from 10 to 17.
10 to 17. So is collaboration a big thing for you? Do you talk a lot to guys like Kian and...
Well, Kian and I grew up together, so...
That's right.
That's why I'm here.
Yeah. But do you share ideas?
Yeah, all the time.
And learn from each other?
Yeah,
And because it's not, whilst tattooing is, you're there with the client, you're also surrounded by other artists as well.
Of course.
So you're always evolving, always growing, always learning.
Of course. Yeah. Obviously, yeah.
Yeah.
You want to surround yourself with people that will inspire you.
And you paint as well, right?
I do oil painting, yeah.
So you've been doing that
That's
now
a new
for
skill, about 2 years.
2 years now. And you go to, is it uni on a Monday or
Yeah,
a TAFE
yeah.
course or
Yeah, I go to a TAFE course and
do
for
some
2
painting?
days a week in oil paint, learning the fine art of realistic oil painting.
And has that helped translating then into tattooing?
Yeah, it's not, it's a totally different animal. It's a totally different animal. I mean, I'm doing more traditional style tattooing. I'm not
Yeah.
doing, you know, for me, a tattoo has to start as a tattoo and then become, as opposed to like a photograph.
Sure.
So I'm going to take a photograph that started as a photograph, make it into a tattoo. I don't go that way. I go the
Yes.
opposite, right?
Okay.
It has to start as a tattoo, and then I'll take the photograph and make it a tattoo kind of thing. You know?
Yes.
So the lines and bold and stuff. So it doesn't really translate, but it's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, I can
I like
imagine.
painting. It's fun. It's relaxing. You know.
I'm a young person. I'm looking at getting into the industry. What advice would you give someone wanting to become a tattoo artist?
Well, obviously, my first answer is going to say don't. But if you want to get into tattooing, my advice is to do a formal apprenticeship
Yes.
with a serious tattoo studio.
Yeah.
It's very, very difficult. A lot of people now just go online and learn it all there because they just don't have the discipline to, deal with an apprenticeship for a year and a half, right?
Yes.
But it means so much more because you get to learn a lot of secrets and you get to know what real tattooing is. And if you're going to have longevity in this industry and really understand the nuts and bolts of it and have it as a serious career, I think it's really imperative that you learn in a studio and do in a proper apprenticeship.
Do it properly.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Well, Ian, mate, I want to tell you, this has been a really insightful conversation. And I'm so grateful that you've taken the time out of your busy schedule to sit down with us and learn more about the guy behind the needle and tell us your story. So, mate, thanks so much for jumping
Andrew.
on our podcast.
Thank you.
And we'll look forward to our next sleeve together in a couple of weeks' time.
Next week.
Yeah, that's true.
Next week.
Next Friday.
Next Friday. Yeah.
Thanks, mate.
Thanks, brother.
Ciao.